Hey friends, thanks for joining me today. I want to show you how we make our chessboards in shop.
All right, friends, so we need to plane down some boards. First thing you need to do, protect your hearing. Make sure you protect your hearing so you don't lose it. Now we need to get our maple, and then we need to get our walnut, and we're gonna plane these down, and they're gonna be the different colors for our checkerboard. The next thing we need to do, folks, is take these boards to the joiner and make one side totally straight and flat. After your boards are all jointed, take them to the table saw and rip them in 1.5-inch strips. So if you have a long piece, you can go ahead and just rip 1.5-inch strips and then cut it later. If you've already cut it into 14-inch pieces, then you can just rip those. But I rip them to 1.5 inches. After your pieces are all ripped, then we need to cut them and make sure that they are 14 inches long. It needs to be at least 14 inches long, and I'll explain a little bit later why we need them at least 14 inches when our final cutting board or our final chessboard is only going to be 12 inches long. Once we have them all cut to 14 inches, we'll go ahead and lay them out the way we are going to glue them, and then we will preset our clamps to that length, so that way once we get glue on them, we're not having to finagle them and moving them once our pieces all have glue on them and they get tough to manage. The way I put glue on my pieces is I will put all my pieces on edge except for the very last one that doesn't get any glue. I'll glue all of them, and then I'll start rotating them down and sliding them together. If I glue them all and then rotate them and let that glue leak out, then I'm just wasting glue. So I like to rotate them all on their edge, put glue on them, and then slide them all together. And then it usually seems like I waste less glue that way. Now I usually leave my pieces to glue for at least 12 hours. So usually that's an evening and I hit it in the morning. Now, see where your piece is not even? That's okay. We're going to go ahead and plane that later. But right now, we need one flat edge, totally flat. So we're going to take it to the table saw and only cut off just a little bit in order for it to be totally flat on the edge. You can do this with the miter gauge or with the fence if the other side is really flat. Make sure when you glue things up that one side is really flat and you won't have that much of a problem. when you rip these, we're going to rip them to 1.5 inches again, so we have squares. Then when you rip these, don't push them out all the way so that they fall on the ground. These pieces are only held together by just 1.5 inches worth of glue right now, and they're almost a little bit brittle to where if they fall on the ground, they will break apart, and that'll be harder for us to glue up and get in place. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and glue up the strips that we just ripped, and we're gonna alternate so that if we look at one side and say it's the start, we have an alternating dark and light side. We wanna alternate these so that way it creates that checkerboard look. And when you do this glue up, make sure one side is totally flat. They should both be flat and flush, but make sure one side's flat. If they aren't, we can go ahead and rip off just a tiny little bit to make it totally flat. But if we don't have to do this, that's even better. Now we'll go ahead and we will take our board that we have. We will get a piece of plywood, and we're going to mark out that board on the plywood. The reason we are going to do this is because we want to put this board through the planer, and so by gluing a piece of plywood to the bottom of it, it will add a whole lot more strength and it won't be apt to break apart in the planer. So make your plywood the exact same size as your board, glue on the board to the plywood, and then I usually get something really heavy instead of clamping it, because sometimes your clamps can, or when you squeeze it tight, it can move around. I get something really heavy to put on top of it and let it sit all night. Then I go ahead, and since it's offset, we're not flat, then I run it through the planer and get that all to the same exact height, get the same thickness on the whole thing. And so when you run it through the planer, be real careful not to take too much. I usually don't take more than a quarter turn when I'm planing anything, and sometimes when I'm doing checkerboards, I'll even go even less than that and go maybe like 1/8 of a turn per time I run it through the planer. So you just want to take off a little bit and not overdo it. All right, now we need to put some trim pieces on the side. So I'm going to measure the total thickness from my top of my board to the bottom of the plywood, and I'm going to cut strips to match that thickness so that they can become the trim pieces on the perimeter of the board. After that, we're going to go ahead and mark the trim pieces. I'm going to put miters on these, a 45 miter on the corners. You don't have to. You can make them just a regular square butt joint on your trim pieces, but I went ahead and put miters on these, and then I just glue them together. I don't put nails in these. I just put glue on it and clamp it both ways, and then again I let it sit overnight and let that glue do what it's supposed to do.
All right, friends, so now once you get to this step, you're pretty much done. All we really need to do is sand it, and then if you want to seal it, put some polyurethane on it, you can do that. What I would not do is I would not stain it, because we don't want to change the color of our checkerboard or chessboard. We just want to seal it over. So you can go ahead and put some polyurethane on that, maybe do a couple coats, and then you'll be good to go ahead and start playing. All right, folks, so there you go. Now you can go ahead and make your own checkerboard or chessboard, whatever you want. But you need to remember to work hard, because hard work is its own reward. Thanks for watching.